Folks, this is not very encouraging. We're supposed to trust these people? If Congress doesn't know what's going on in the bills they vote on and pass, how can they possibly keep their oath of office? They can't. No wonder Democrat congressmen and senators don't want to get into an evolution debate. There is absolutely no evidence of intelligent design in Congress at all. America is the only country founded on a belief which recognizes that individual rights, I don't know what collective rights are, individual rights come from the Creator, not man, and that these rights were important enough to write down for all generations. The moral reason I introduced House Bill 10 is that stealing liberty was wrong in 1776, and it is still wrong in 2010, and I don't care what your motives are. Over 225 years ago, King George III in Parliament told American colonists that they must buy tea only from the British East India Company. But even the King and Parliament did not mandate that colonists had to buy their tea or go to jail and pay fines, as President Obama has mandated that we buy his brand of insurance. Don Corleone would love to sell insurance like that. Boston patriots dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston Harbor, and we need to dump from public office these politicians who voted for Obamacare. Our country faces serious moral and economic decay. Dependency upon government is growing at an alarming rate, and it is growing by design. Financial rating agencies warn that Uncle Sam's AAA bond rating is in jeopardy. Iraq, with weekly beheadings, has a better financial rating than California, and the comptroller of Illinois just found out he doesn't have enough money to pay the bills. In 2009, roughly 47% of all U.S. households paid no federal income tax. Currently, 13.1% of our population, or 40 million people, collect food stamps. 40% of all births are now out of wedlock. Our national defense establishment is rejecting standards for our armed forces, which George Washington upheld since he was commander-in-chief. We are failing to protect the very first right in the Declaration of Independence, the right to life. George Washington, in his 1789 inaugural address, said the propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven has ordained. The 56 men who signed the Declaration were risking charges of treason, the penalty for which was death. Remember, in 1776, the founders appealed to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions and for the support of this declaration. With a firm reliance upon the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. One of those signers, Charles Carroll, the last signer of the Declaration of Independence, who died, was the last one alive. When he signed the Declaration, he went up to the desk and he signed Charles Carroll. He turned away and started walking back. He stopped, he thought, he went back to the desk, and he added, "of Carrollton." He said, so King George will know which Charles Carroll it is. Charles Carroll was the richest man in America. It would be as if Bill Gates had said to Barack Obama, we're dissolving all bonds of allegiance. You can take all my money. It isn't worth submission to you. Madison, in 1788, in the Federalist paper number 37, said, it is impossible for the man of pious reflection not to perceive in it a finger of the almighty hand which has so frequently and signally extended to our relief in the critical stages of the revolution. Remember, These were supposed deists who didn't believe in the intervention of God in human affairs. People who say that are uneducated. Let's look at Jefferson. Jefferson recounted in his autobiography in 1820 how he and younger members of the Virginia House of Burgess responded to the British Boston Port Bill in 1774, which shut Boston's seaport in response to the Tea Party. Jefferson wrote, "We were under the conviction of the necessity of arousing our people from the lethargy into which they had fallen, and thought that the appointment of a day of general fasting and prayer would be most likely to call up and alarm their attention. For appointing the first day of June for a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer." Now, these are statesmen saying this. "To implore heaven to avert us from the evils of civil war, to inspire us with firmness in support of our rights, and to turn the hearts of the King and Parliament to moderation and justice." It passed without opposition. The governor dissolved the House of Burgess. We returned home and invited the clergy to pray. The effect was like a shock of electricity throughout the colony. In 1778, then General George Washington wrote to Virginia Brigadier General Thomas Nelson, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Washington was in White Plains, New York, for the second time facing the British. He said, "After 2 years of maneuvering and undergoing the strangest vicissitudes that perhaps ever attended any one contest since the creation, the hand of Providence has been so conspicuous in all this that he must be worse than an infidel that lacks faith, and more than wicked that has not gratitude enough to acknowledge his obligations." These men understood the necessity for appealing to divine providence to beat the British Empire. Now, how does the Obama administration treat conservative Americans today who also pray? Well, the President's Department of Homeland Security in April 2009 prepared a report for law enforcement officials. Here is a literal quote from DHS. "Right-wing extremists bemoan the decline of U.S. stature, the possible passage of new restrictions on firearms, and those that are rejecting federal authority in favor of state and local authority. It may include groups and individuals that are dedicated to a single issue, such as opposition to abortion." This broad brush of Obama administration tarring his policy opponents would include James Madison and Thomas Jefferson for their support of the 9th and 10th Amendments, and Mother Teresa for her no